Muchanim? So, this week, we have in Parshas Baha'alotcha, we talk about a topic that we learned not too long ago, the Pesach Sheni Sikha. Because this is the parsha where it talks the whole story about Pesach Sheni that we spoke about not too long ago. Was it about a month ago, La'erech? No? Mm-hmm. That this took place. That we learned the Sikha about the people, that we have it in this week's parsha, that couldn't bring the Korban Pesach, and because of that, they made a whole new thing, a whole new invention. They asked Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Eibusher gave them a second Pesach. In the previous Sikha, we spoke more about why did we have to wait, and why did Hashem have to wait for the people to ask, and why wasn't it right away figured out for them? Many other questions. And this week the Sikha is going to go more directly into Ruchnius and Yonim, what the difference is Beruchnius between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. But based on those differences, we will see differences in halacha and in nigla between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. But right away at the beginning, he's going to start off with a topic that we already spoke about in the first Sikha, which is the three opinions about what's Pesach Sheni's relationship to Pesach Rishon. Let's see it inside. We get the Pesach Sheni, Matzinu Gimel Deis Veifanim. Aleph, Regel B'fnei Atzmihu. It's a separate Yom Tov. There's a Yom Tov called Pesach Rishon, and there's another Yom Tov, Pesach Sheni. Except, not everybody does the Pesach Sheni. It's that separate Yom Tov is a special Yom Tov for people that didn't do Pesach Rishon. But it's completely two separate Yom Tov. Beis, Tashlumin the Rishon. It's making up for the first one. There's in school, there's something called a makeup test. You didn't do the test in the right date, so you have a makeup test. Tashlumin. But Tikkunei loy meskinan lei. It's not something that repairs and fixes up and makes, as we'll soon explain what that means, up exactly what the first Pesach was. Gimel Takanah the Rishon. It is something that fixes up the first. And we'll talk about the differences between them, and we already mentioned these three things in the Pesach Sheni shir. Whether it's a regel b'fnei atzmi, or it's Tashlumin, or it's a Takanah the Rishon, kimevur ba'arucha b'teshuvas Rav Avram ben Rambam. Regel b'fnei atzmoi pirushoi shepesach sheni einoi toli b'chiyuv Pesach Rishon elahu chiyuv ba'atzmoi k'may sharer regolim. So therefore, the application is by, like I mentioned last time, two of my kids were born in Nisan. I have two kids that were born in Nisan after Pesach, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. Would they have brought a Pesach Sheni or not? So if you say it's a regel b'fnei atzmai, so then they would bring a Pesach Sheni. But if it's only to fix up what they didn't do then, they weren't mechuyev then. We also mentioned that this might not be totally this way, but let's say says l'fichach gershon is guy ben shnei pesachim. If you had somebody that converted between the two Pesachim, or v'chein katan she'igdel, you had a child that became bar mitzvah between the two Pesachim, chayav lasses Pesach Sheni. Mashenkin l'fi hadeis shu tashlum takanah the Pesach Rishon, chiyuv Pesach Sheni, totally b'chiyuv Pesach Rishon. Therefore, umisha lo yaya mechuyev Pesach Rishon, lo ychalol of chiyuv Pesach Sheni. So therefore, according to those two opinions, if a child was not bar mitzvah at the times of Pesach Rishon, he's not going to bring Pesach Sheni just because he became bar mitzvah in between. Tashlumin the Rishon pirushai. Misha hechzer akrovs korb Pesach Rishon b'mezid, not by mistake, but he intentionally didn't do it. Af shebakach over kvar al iser kodes nitna loya toira or nasan loya toira tashlumin malkach. Shaydei akrovs Pesach Sheni is battle chiyuv akodes she'olav, because there's like we also mentioned then, there's only two mitzvahs aseh ben atoira that hasn't chiyuv kodes. Pesach, Korban Pesach, and Bris Milah. So how does he remove the chiyuv kares that the person has for being mevatel Pesach Rishon intentionally? That's when he does the second Pesach. Aval im loy hikriv gam Pesach Sheni. Akfilu kishadavar hoya b'shoigig hini kivan shaloy hoya loy Tashlumin the Rishon nishar mekayim b'meilach chiyuv hakares shahoya olav al shehezid berishon. Since it's only making up, that means we gave you another chance. A person that wasn't makriv the carbon pesach the first time around, intentionally, b'mezid, right away he was mechuyev kares. But we tell him, you know what? We'll give you an opportunity to make up for it. Now what happens at the second Pesach? It wasn't his fault. He was stuck on the plane, he didn't get there all the time, whatever it was. Nuh-uh. It's not going to help. Because the person already had the chiyuv kares on him because he wasn't makriv the carbon pesach on the right time. The Tashlumin is like a get out of jail card, get out of jail free card. But if you lost your get out of jail free card, nobody's going to say, I lost it. I'm sorry, you don't have it, you don't have it. You didn't do the Pesach Sheni, I don't care why you didn't do it. It doesn't work. Takanah the Rishon who, according to the opinion that it fixes up the first, a person has already built in a Takanah in Pesach Rishon. Even if he did it intentionally, you have a second opportunity. You do it the first time around, or you do it the second time around. Therefore, since you didn't have the chiyuv of kares, why? So therefore, it doesn't make a difference the fact that the first Pesach he was b'mezid, l'poyel he was b'shoigig. The second Pesach, that's enough. These three opinions we had in general already in the previous sikh. Now the Rebbe is going to bring a very interesting seeming contradiction. Sefer HaMitzvahs la Rambam. The Rambam, not in the Mishnah Torah, but in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he wrote a Sefer. There are certain mechabrim known as Moinei HaMitzvahs, certain Rishonim known as Moinei HaMitzvahs. The Gemara says that there are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. But how do you count what's a mitzvah? Let's say we learned in this week's parsha about how the onon would rise up and they would blow the shofars and then they would move. Or we learned in previous parshas the encampments. Are those called mitzvahs? Those were only things that took place in the midbar. So there's different opinions of how we count the 613 mitzvahs. The Rambam has something called Sefer HaMitzvahs. The Ramban has a different count of the mitzvahs. There's others that have different counts of the mitzvahs. So when the Rambam counts, how do we reach the number of 613? He says, Korban Pesach Rishon is one mitzvah, and a second mitzvah is Pesach Sheni. That means that they really have no connection with each other. So again, Sefer HaMitzvah Rambam nimna mitzvahs Pesach Sheni b'minyan HaMitzvahs k'mitzvah b'fnei atzmam u'betam hadover. Why he says that it's a separate mitzvah? Bir HaRambam lefi sha'alochi k'Rebbe shePesach Sheni hu regel b'fnei atzmai. If we say that it's a Tashlumin l'rishon, if we say it's a Takanah l'rishon, so then it's really a continuation. But if you say it's a regel b'fnei atzmai, then we know there's two separate mitzvahs. There's one mitzvah of Pesach Rishon, a second mitzvah of Pesach Sheni. But the Rebbe asks, if you remember in that sikh also we said there's the Manda Amrim, there's Rabbi Chanani ben Akashya, there's Rebbe, I don't remember right now who the other Manda Amrim was. Rebbe is the one that says that Pesach Sheni is regel b'fnei atzmai. אבל אין מובן גם לדעת רבי שפסח שני הוא רגל בפני עצמאים, הרי חיוב שייך רק למי שלא הקריב פסח ראשון, שהרי מי שהקריב פסח ראשון יכול להביא פסח שני. ונמצא שסוף סוף Gam das Rabbi Pesach Sheni him Mitzvah haba b'mkoim Pesach Rishon u'b'meila ein el kiyum shel oisei mitzvah the Pesach Rishon lahakriv korban Pesach v'im kemadum man zois Rambam ke mitzvah b'fnei atzma. Even when we call it a regel b'fnei atzma, it's not completely mechuyev on every yid. It's only for those people that didn't do Pesach Rishon. So why are you going to call it a separate mitzvah to the extent that it's going to be one of the 613? Seemingly, it shouldn't be a separate mitzvah. Therefore, the Rebbe comes to the conclusion, Pesach Sheni Pesach Rishon kshurim zeh b'zeh. Even according to the opinion that regel b'fnei atzmai, they're still linked because the only people that bring Pesach Sheni are the ones that didn't bring Pesach Rishon. This is like the underlying idea behind the rest of the Sikha. So here the Rebbe is going to explain throughout the Sikha, and he's going to bring it first with other examples of the differences in halacha between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, that really, according to looking at the inner meaning of the mitzvah, according to Pnimius HaTorah, according to Chassidus, what's the idea of Pesach Rishon and what's the idea of Pesach Sheni, and that's why each idea is valid on its own. And that's why they're separate mitzvahs, because each concept stands on its own and doesn't need the other thing to perfect it, to make it an idea, as we'll see. So he says
that it's a separate thing because there's a gather by both.
But each one has a separate gather. We don't know yet what that gather is. That's going to be the rest of the Sikha. Hachilukim shematzinu and Pesach Rishon Pesach Sheni Aleph Harishon Aser Bal Yiro Bal Yimatzeh. The Pesach Rishon is so chamur that you're not allowed to have any chometz around, not in your possession, not visible, not in no way. Vasheni chometz u'matzeh imoy babayis. In the same place, you can have over there chometz and matzah at the same time that you're eating the Pesach Sheni. That's one difference. Beis Harishon Noyeg Kol Shiva. What does it mean that the first one is all 7 days? You mark the Korban Pesach only by night, only the night of the 15th. You're not marking the Korban Pesach on Chof Nisan. You only mark it on that, not even that night, the afternoon, and you eat it that night. That by Pesach Rishon you can't eat chametz for 7 days. Ella ubelashna gebara shekarban Pesach Rishon atzmai hu karban hanechal l'shisha. What does it mean? You're not allowed to eat the karban for 6 days. After midnight, you're not allowed to eat the karban Pesach. But the Chazal explains she'oichlin olav matzis shisha yomim. Or the way Rashi explains it about it, the fact that we're eating 6 days after the first day of Pesach, we're eating matzah, it's considered like a continuation of the matzah that we're eating b'karban Pesach. So, be that as it may, the first Pesach is a 7-day idea. Vasheni, and the second Pesach is Yom Echad. V'chilukim eilu shemen Pesach Rishon v'Sheni boim k'toitzam mesuvav ma'geder sh'kolach mehem. Like we just now said, each one has its own gather, each one is its own concept, Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, and because of that, their halachas are different. So now he's going to get into what's the difference in the Gedara. V'abir b'zeh al pi achiluk b'pashtus ben Pesach Rishon l'Pesach Sheni. Pesach Rishon u'achiyuv shel akravas ha'Pesach ba'ofen ha'ro'ui shenikva mikara al pi seder ha'Torah bizmano. Pesach Rishon is a time that the Torah said it comes Yudalad Nisan in the afternoon. You have to bring the Korban Pesach. Teshuva b'Nisan at night. You have to eat the Korban Pesach. This is something that Torah established for everybody based on the right time, following the order how Torah established the order of things. Just like there's different karbonis or different mitzvahs that have an order. Shabbos is every 7th day of the week. Yom Kippur is the 10th of the month of Tishrei. Everything has an order, everything has a time. The same thing Pesach Rishon. It has its time. Ve'ilu Pesach Sheni hu oifen achiyuv shaloi al pi seder, shaloi bezmanei. Yesh nam anoshim shaloi hiviu as a Pesach bezmanei. In general, there's an expression that once the day passed that a certain carbon is supposed to be brought, you don't bring it. Carbon Pesach is unique, that there's such a type of thing, that there's a makeup carbon. If a person, if the Koyanim didn't bring the special carbonis, let's say he's supposed to bring on Shavuos, and they didn't bring it on Shavuos, you can't do it in the middle of Av or something like that. You can't do it Vav B'Tammuz or something like that. It's gone. It's over. Ella ha'toyra kavala moyad noisef la'avos ha'korban la'achar zman. U'kepiskim kvayt yus meircham yad mur. And this is something that was a big theme of the last time we learned this idea on Pesach Sheni. In Yonish al Pesach Sheni, who es is nitakim farfaln she'ein dover chaser Takanah. Tamid efshel asakin afilu mishaya Tamei mishaya b'derech rechoika, which is all the expressions that the pasuk says. When Moshe Rabbeinu taught the halachas of Pesach Sheni, it says someone who was a Tamei or b'derech rechoika lochem, they could make a Pesach Sheni. Va'afilu kishahoya zeh lochem. So we derive from it. Why does it say lochem? Why does it have the word? Why does it have to add that word lochem? So lochem, it's explained. It means hainu b'ritzoynoi. Even someone, you might have thought that Pesach Sheni is only for someone that did it unintentionally. But what did we say before? Even someone that b'mezid did not bring Pesach Rishon, he could still bring a Pesach Sheni. This is a very powerful message that's not yom yom, that even if a person did something intentionally that tore him away from a mitzvah, you could still repair it. Hatzadik Avodah Hashem al pi derech hayashar asher also likimas adam yashar al pi haseder Torah. That's Pesach Rishon. Everything is done correctly in its right way in its right time. You didn't mess up. You're doing what you're supposed to do. I'll say that Torah. The ten Shlaim Beis Hashem Efsharis l'sakinas ha'avar lahashel masachos. V'zeu achiluk. Shanu moitzim b'matzav b'nei Yisrael b'Pesach Rishon b'Pesach Sheni b'Pamar Rishon. These two approaches of the tzaddik versus the Baal Teshuva is what the Yidden were like in the first Pesach versus the second Pesach. Be'esak rovas Pesach Rishon hoya b'nei Yisrael b'matzav shel tzaddikim. Matzavam oz hoya kekatan shenoil ze'ata. Nevuas Yecheskel, that the nevuah of the Yecheskel that's brought down in the Haggadah, we have that pasuk. We're soon going to say that the pasuk of the Haggadah that all indicates that Leidas Am Yisrael was by Gulas Mitzrayim. That's called the Leida. Just because why? Because that's when Yidden became Yidden. They were Nizgayer, and a Ger Shenizgayer Kikatan Shenoel Dami. On the other hand, the Chazal say, why does it say over there in the bush? One goes on the dam milah that they had as a mitzvah, and one goes on the dam of the korban pesach that they had as a mitzvah. Or it's a gerus. The gershon is gair kekatan shenoil dami. Ein biyade kol averes v'oimrim loy, like it says by Rus, that she was told Yishalem Hashem pa'olech v'tim maskurtech shleima goimer al asher bos lachsis tachas knafov. In other words, a ger there's no tightness, no complaints, nothing wrong with the ger. The ger is all perfect. So that is what Pesach Rishon is. Pesach Rishon is the time when Yidden are all tzaddikim. That's what the time of Pesach Rishon indicates. Umazoi Pesach Sheni bom avur elu asher hayu tmeim betuma gufa tamei meis lenefesh adam. Here he's going to speak in the spiritual concept. We're not talking about that he did anything wrong. These weren't people that did anything wrong in the events over there at Pesach Sheni. They were carrying the body of Yosef, or they were taking care of Nadav Avihu, like we spoke about last time. But we're talking about the spiritual idea, the spiritual concept of Tumah, that a person is not just Tamei, but is Tumas Meis, and the idea of death has to do with the Chometz Hadas, Umisi, idea Chometz Hadas, Sherish Kol Chatoim. So when we use the idea that a person is Tamei, that spiritually indicates a separation from Kedusha, which means something that you need to have Teshuva for. Not the Avodah of Tzaddikim like Pesach Rishon, but the Avodah of Baalei Teshuva. They had a powerful request. They had a request from the depth of their being. Just like by Teshuva. One of the components of Teshuva is you need to have vidui. Yom Kippur, we have al-chet so many times. A main part of the mitzvah of Teshuva is to be misvada, to have vidui to Hashem. And they said, Anachnu tmeim l'nefesh adam. But once they had that vidui, now they said, okay, what do we do to get back? Like we just now said, vidui, bakoshes tikkun achoser, and also tikkun b'shleimus. So the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. Loidak lahakriv stam, el imaylas ha'akrava b'moyadoi u'b'soich b'nei Yisrael. When they asked to do this, it says, Lama nigora lebilti hakriv es korban Hashem. Could have stopped over there, but they didn't stop by saying that. They said, lebilti hakriv es korban Hashem b'moyadoi b'soich b'nei Yisrael. It seems very strange. Moyadoi already passed. The time is over. Even if we give you a chance to do the Korban Pesach now, but the time of the Korban Pesach was Teshuva B'Nissen. That's gone. That's over. That's done with. And the same thing, B'Soich B'nai Yisrael, amongst Klal Yisrael. Again, it's not going to be amongst Klal Yisrael. It's going to be a few Yechidim over there that are going to do that. It reminds me when I was in Lud, and they paskin for us that a few chutzlards bachrim that we have to keep 2 days Yom Tov. So we kept it like they made us stay in yeshiva the second day, Shavuos, whatever, and we kept it over there in yeshiva. We had like 6 bachrim, chutzlards, there were mitzvah, 4 other bachrim to answer, whatever. But the point is, it wasn't B'Soich B'nai Yisrael. The rest of the yeshiva was writing and doing malachas, whatever. The same thing. They want to keep Pesach Sheni. Fine. But it's not going to be B'Moyada anymore. And it's not going to be B'Soich B'nai Yisrael. So why are they saying, Lama Nigara Labilti Hakar is Korban Hashem B'Moyada B'Soich B'nai Yisrael? So the Rebbe says, this is the power of Teshuva. Teshuva is so powerful that it becomes as if, even though they're not doing it on the right time, it's considered like it's on the right time, and it's considered with all the milas as if it's B'Soich B'nai Yisrael. Ubezeh Yuvanat Hama Pnimi. Lakach shemitzas Pesach Sheni loy ba ba'ofen shel tzivui meis Hashem l'chatchila. Kishar kemat kol tzivui ha'Torah. This is also a similar issue we brought down the last sikha. The Eibusher could have said it like any other mitzvah. You do this and this, and they could tell you plan B. That doesn't work out. You do a different thing. They, especially like we asked the question in the last sikha that we learned, the Eibusher knew that there would be this problem. So why didn't he right away address it and say, okay, those people that can't bring, let them bring a Pesach Sheni. But that's not the style of Pesach Sheni. Pesach Sheni can't come milmailo. Pesach Sheni, since it's the Avodah of Baalei Teshuva, has to come from us. Let's see it inside. So he says, Ki im dafke la'achar shebnei Yisrael his'oiru bikshu lamani gara goimer kitnua shel Teshuva ba b'derech klal ayidei his'oiru rusay shel Baalei Teshuva. He says, b'derech klal, it's possible to get a Yisrael Teshuva molmaila, but in general, it's I am changing myself. Avshu tamel nefesh adam. Hainu sho'oimid b'matzav shel hepech hatar. Valachas kama v'kama she'ena b'matzav shel kedusha. U'b'meila eina shayach likloit u'lahargish gilui armol maila. B'kol mokim hu misoyre mitzad atzmai malmata lamayla b'tshuva. That's why Pesach Sheni had to come from the Yidden going to Moshe Rabbeinu and complaining, because that was all about tshuva, and tshuva is about coming from the person. Now the Rebbe is again going to take this Chassidus idea, this Pnimis HaTorah idea, that Pesach Rishon is a Avodah of Tzaddikim and Pesach Sheni is Avodah of Baalei Teshuva, and with that explain another interesting idea in Nigla. Al pi ha'amr meturas davar tamah al pi Nigla. Isa b'divrei Chazal she'oisam tmeim lenefesh adam chal shvi shelahem liyas be'erev Pesach. The din is that the process of being matired a person from tumas mes takes 7 days, and the last day of this group to be able to become tahir was Erev Pesach, which means that they would only miss by 1 day everything, because Erev Pesach, when you have to bring the Korban Pesach, the next day they will already have been able to bring the Korban Pesach. So here's a very strange thing. Wait another month. There's a din of Yemei HaTashlumin. If you noticed, we didn't say Tachnun till Yud Beis Sivan. Why don't we say Tachnun till Yud Beis Sivan? Because there's something called Yemei Tashlumin. Every Yid that's Oila Regel has to bring certain karbanos called Shalmi Chagiga, Shalmi Simcha. They have to bring Oila Sreiyah. They have to bring certain karbanos to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, if you have hundreds of thousands of Yidden coming to the Beis HaMikdash, and Shavuos, let's say, is only 1 day, see, you're not going to be able to bring all the karbanos in 1 day. So we have 7 days from Vav till Yud Beis, which they can bring the karbanos. And the truth is, this applies by every Yom Tov, but by Shavuos it stands out, because Shavuos is only 1 day Yom Tov, and still there's 7 days to bring it. But there's the 7 days of Pesach, the 7 days of Sukkot. So there was Yemei Tashlumim. So if you think about it, it was really strange. If their seventh day of Tar was up on Erev Pesach, why did we have to invent a whole new Yom Tov? A month later, Pesach Sheni, they could have done the rest of Pesach. They could have made like other karbanos that can bring Yemei Tashlumim. Why do we have to make this whole new big deal of a whole new creation of a Yom Tov? Now moving at Tamei. Again, according to Chassidus, we can understand this. Tshuva eina rakum Allah mashlimas achaser. Like the other two explanations, is it Takanah, is it Tashlumim? Elahigam derech ba'avodas Hashem regel ba'afnei atzmoi ubechodesh hamoira al chidush avoda b'afnei atzmoi. And we're soon going to speak about the significance of Pesach Sheni specifically taking place in the month of Iyar, because the month of Iyar shows that it's something that's coming from me. That's the idea of Sfiras HaOmer. We've also spoken about it in that other sikh. Vav. Now he's going to say another thing. Seemingly, Tzaddik, the Pesach Rishon, versus the Baalei Teshuva, the Pesach Sheni, you would say that Tzaddik is the ultimate, the best. And the Baalei Teshuva, the level of Pesach Sheni, is just, okay, if you messed up, then you have that. But the truth is, even the level of Baalei Teshuva has a mile over Tzaddik. Af shavoyis hatzaddik ba'ofen yosher al pi seder ha'toram mikol mokim yeshna mile ba'avodas Baalei Teshuva. Avodas hatzaddik payeles b'dvarim shebekedusha al kaponim b'dvarim hamutarim. When a tzaddik does his avodah, he does it either with holy things, he uses tefillin, he uses a sefer Torah, he uses a mezuzah, or at least in things that are kosher things. He can do mitzvahs, or he can elevate the food that he eats by making a bracha on it, any other activity that he's allowed to do. He's bringing it into the world of Kedusha. Let's say a person steals an esrig, you cannot use that for the mitzvah of lulav and esrig. Because it's a mitzvah ba'aveda. Mitzvahs, the Avodah of Tzaddikim, is only elevating and making holy things that are mutar. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, the word mutar means released, like mater asurim. But a davar asur cannot be made into kedusha. In yonim shel ram mishal shkufsat meis lagamri ef shel avarer, something that's bad that comes what Chassidus calls from the three totally Talmudic clippers. You cannot refine them, you cannot elevate them. But what do you do with them? Al yesh l'tchaysam. Things that are not kosher, things that are wrong, you got to push them away. That is the world and the experience of the tzaddik. When a Baal Teshuva does Teshuva out of love of Hashem, the Chazal say, he comes out that by his doing Teshuva, the non-kosher food that he ate is now becoming elevated, when normally a tzaddik cannot elevate the non-kosher food. The koichet shal tshuva lifol zois mekoyre beginnen shal amayla meseder ishtal shalos. Mitzad haseder the Torah ishtal shalos lo yitochen klal musig shal fiches doinus lozachias. An aveda is an aveda, a mitzvah is a mitzvah. You can't mix them together. Okay, Maimar Razal, Shalu l'chachma, they asked what should happen to a person that sinned. They asked l'nevuah what should happen to a person that sins. L'toida what should happen to a person that sins. Chaytim ha'anshu v'kulam gam ha'toida loy nasnu kol makom l'tshuva. Nobody gave the idea. You know what? Let the person do tshuva. Then it says, one said that he has to die. Another said that he brings a carbon asham. Another said, should have, I think, Yisurim. Way beyond the world, way beyond the normal order of things. Hashem is higher than darkness and higher than light. Light and darkness are the same by him. So therefore, why would we even think that they should be missing something? That we're saying, Lama Nigara, Valderach se Yishlishal, Bepiskum Anal Shakveit Smeir Chame Admur, Shairos Pesach Sheni as Nitokin Farfalm, Shein Davar Chaser Takanah, Lama Yalu B'datenu Shadavar Chaser Takanah. Why would we even think such a thing? That things are too late? Of course things are not too late. Why would there even be such a possibility? In other words, instead of them asking Lama Nigara, they should have gone over to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, you know what, we didn't do the Pesach Rishon, we want to have something instead. We want to be able to do something. But the expression was Lama Nigara. In other words, the assumption was, the premise was, the first Hanacha was, we're messed up, we're ruined. But we're crying to you, we're begging you, Lama Nigara. And the same thing the Friedrich Rebbe said, as Nishtokim Rafal. That means there is a reason to think, there's a certain Hanacha Rishoina, Hashkafa Rishoina, that we think it's over. Question is, why should we ever think that it's over? Why would we even consider that? That's because the difference, if you're looking at things from Torah or Seder Ishtal Shlus, or you're looking beyond that. Elo Kanal, Mitzada Torah Atzma, Ein Tshuva Ma'ila Lafich, it's Azdoinus L'Zachias Kanal. Like we said before, that the Tshuva that they were doing would help even that's considered B'moyadoi, it's considered B'Soich B'nei Yisrael, it's everything like the first time around. V'achein, from the Torah's perspective, Hadavar Chaser Takanah. Ela Sheisoidus B'nei Yisrael B'tnuot Shel Tshuva. Lama Nigara, it bothered them. Why should we be missing? Magas ad ledarges HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalul HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom Mailam Mishtalshlus. Misham, when you're talking to Hashem himself, higher than everything, Hamayna Hu, She'ein Zechaser Takanah, Yesh Le'inin Shal Pesach Sheni. It's like, just to give a very simple example. There's the rule book. You go to the rule book says, you do this, this happens. You don't do this, that happens. Normally, you deal with any bureaucracy says, you didn't fill out the form in triplicate, that's it. Or you used black ink and they used blue ink. I went with my kid to make a passport not too long ago. Fregnish. I wrote part of the form and he wrote the other part of the form. They made me sorry about it. I had to redo the whole form because we wanted to make it quicker. That's it. It's in the rule book, azay. But if you go to the one that makes the rules, so then, in the appropriate manner, you don't just go say, hey, why you do it? But you go ahead and you bet and you do tshuva and you said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. The Eibusher says, okay, fine. I'll turn it around. I can even make this doinus naslik izachis. So now the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. It doesn't mean that Torah is not involved in the process. Even though tshuva, we just now said, comes from a place that's higher than the Torah, comes from Hashem himself, but Torah is Torah Or. And Torah illuminates and shines and teaches us about things that are even beyond its purview. So this power of tshuva that we learn from Pesach Sheni, Lama Negora, and so on, is something that's recorded in Torah. Torah is the one that tells us this. In the brackets, Al Shezeh Gufim Mesubur B'Torah Mizgal Al Yod. And therefore the idea of tshuva doesn't really apply to it. The Torah and Hashem are entirely one. And now we're going to go back to the differences that we said there is between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. And Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. Pesach Rishon, Avodah of Tzaddikim, Ein Kol Eisik Ara. That's the tzaddik. The tzaddik just deals Elokim As Adam Yashar only with good things. The negative he doesn't deal with. Ella Yesh Lid Chaysai. When the tzaddik comes up against bad, he pushes it away. Olaficha Chometz Asa Bayira Bayimatza. Chometz is symbolic of bad, so you can't have Chometz around when you have the Pesach Rishon. Also, what's the idea of 7 days? When you're dealing in Seder Ishtalshlus, so everything is a progression. You go step by step. So you have Pesach, you have 7 days, and similarly Sukkot, you have 7 days. You can't just jump. About Shuvah, where the Rebbe in many places says, over here doesn't use that word jumping, it's b'derech diluk. It's not about progressing, going step by step. He's jumping out of who he was before. Mashenkin Pesach Sheni avodas Shuvah shemapechas afsdoinus lazachias after lavarer by gamas achametz. Just like he's taking an Aveda and making it into Mitzvah, the same thing what's normally Asr in Pesach Sheni is permitted. The Chometz now becomes mutter. V'lachein Chometz u'matzah imei rabayis. Mi'achar shavoy yisat shuvi l'mayla magbos ishtalchos kanal lefichach Pesach Sheni u'yem echad b'vad hamoyre loyal inin shal miyut. Somebody could say, Pesach Sheni, it's 1 day. That's not as important as Pesach Rishon. Pesach Rishon is 7 days. Pesach Sheni is only 1 day. Just the opposite. It's 1 day because it's so concentrated and so deep. It doesn't divide itself into parts. Same question is really about Shavuos. Why are the Shloisha Regalim, Pesach and Sukkot are 7 days, and Shavuos is 1 day? Why is that way? So the Alter Rebbe explains in Torah Oyer, the Shavuos was man kabbalas haTorah, Shavu b'chinas keser. It's the core. It's a level beyond divisions. So that's why it's 1 day. So just like Shavuos is just 1 day, the same thing Pesach Sheni is so deep and so beyond division that it comes out only 1 day instead of 7 days like Pesach Rishon. The The Gemara tells a story about this person that there was not a single Aveda that he didn't do. Every Aveda in the book that the person could do, Rabbi Elazar ben Adai did. And then one day he was Nis'ayr B'Teshuva, and he became so overcome with grief and emotion, he put his head between his feet, and he cried, and he passed away from grief and from pain, from feeling that terrible pain about what he did. And then Rebbe cried and said, he cried as well, he burst into tears, and he said, Yesh koina elame b'sha'achas. There's a person that can acquire his world, in other words, Olam Haba, in 1 moment or 1 hour. So the Rebbe is going to explain, it's like 1 hour is this idea of the oneness, beyond this chalkus, like we're saying about Pesach Sheni. So he says, Bacha Rebbe v'amar yesh koina elame b'kam shonim, v'yesh koina elame b'sha'achas. Avodah of Tzaddikim mi b'seder v'adragim. V'lachein oireches avodah zu kama shonim. It has to go step by step. V'b'chinas is chalkas. Ma'shenkin Rabbi Elazar ben Adai she'asik b'avodah Teshuva u'b'Teshuva gufa bay from the Rosh ben Birkov. What does it mean putting his head between his knees? The normal way how a person is the head's on top of his body and the legs are under his body. Seder ishtalshlus. It's a chain order of descent. But when he puts his head between his knees, there is no divisions over here. It's all the same. In 1 hour. Why? Because it reaches the core that's higher than everything. Pesach Rishon b'chodesh Nisan v'lu Pesach Sheni b'chodesh Iyar. It could have been done. The Pesach Sheni could have been any time. It could have been in the middle of Nisan, and it could have been, like we said, sometime in the middle of the Shivas Yimei Tashlumin, or Bechlal could have been in Nisan. Why wait if you're Lama Negara? Why wait till the 15th of Iyar? What's the significance? It has to be Dafka on 15. The Yom Tov couldn't have been a different time. Why do I have to wait till? It's like Pesach, the Carbon Pesach is connected Dafka with 15, so we didn't do the 15 of Pesach, so we have to wait 15 of Nisan, we have to wait till next time 15. Why do you have to wait so long? It says the whole idea of Nisan and Iyar is the difference between the Avodah of Tzaddikim and the Avodah of Baalei Teshuva, which Pesach Rishon is about the Tzaddik, Pesach Sheni is about the Baalei Teshuva. ידוע החילוק בין חודש ניסן לחודש הראשון, לחודש עיר החודש השני, ניסן עניין המשכה וגילוי ממעלה מטה. וגילוי יום ממעלה אין הפועל זיכוך בר קיימא לתמיד במטה, כי אם שבעצם שהו דויכה בלבד סרם. When a person is inspired from something that's happening outside of him, a person experiences something that makes him excited, let's say, about Yiddishkeit. But they themselves did not really fully commit, so they could be dragged along by that excitement for a while, but then afterwards, it's not going to hold. It's not going to have an achizah. It's not going to have something solid down here, and eventually it could leave the person. וזהו על דרך עבודת הצדיקים, שעבודתם היא בעניינם של אור, בעניינם של רע, הם דויכים. They push away the bad. But because they're pushing it away, they didn't transform the bad could sneak up on them again. It's an ongoing and constant thing, and something that happens always. Primarily, even though there's Sfira in Nisan and there's Sfira in Sivan, but Iyar is the only full month that we do the Mitzvah Sfira Sa'im. Why is that so? That's why it's about the Avodah of Pesach Sheni, the Avodah of Teshuva, V'zeh al derech Avodah Teshuva. Shal yodem evara odem as hamata mata b'yoser, ad shegam minyonim shel ra nefachim l'toiv. And then the Rebbe adds another thing. In many places in Chassidus it says, this idea of Nisan and Iyar is also explained as the difference in Nisan and Tishrei. Tishrei is Avodah of Teshuva, Nisan Avodah of Tzaddikim, B'Bechlalos, Hareg the Bedugim Sachiluk, Bei Nissen L'Tishrei, ki yedua, shechodesh Nissen, or Avodah of Tzaddikim, vilu chodesh Tishrei Avodah Teshuva. So now we're going to get back to what we spoke about right away at the beginning of the Sikha, the three types of explanations what Pesach Sheni is. Is Pesach Sheni the idea of regel b'fnei atzmai, the separate Yom Tov? Is it a Tashlumin, making up for what was lost on Pesach Rishon? Or is it a Takanah Rishon, that it's mamish something that was established to fix the first time around? And okay, so he says, Al pi anal, Pesach Sheni hu Avodah Teshuva yuvan atam b'pnimis inyan legimel adayis v'yifanim shu Pesach Sheni, that we know the elu ve'elu divra lakim chayim. When there's a machlokes, it doesn't mean that one opinion is right and the other two are wrong. Every opinion has a meaning and a lesson in Torah. So let's say there's a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. We paskin like Beis Hillel, but that doesn't mean that we don't have lessons and ideas in Torah that we learn out from Beis Shammai. Kanal Sif Aleph, Ki B'chlolos, Geshnam, Gimel, Efanim, Eilu B'Teshuva. These three ways, Takanah, Tashlumin, Regel Fnei Atzmai, are three different levels and three different types of Teshuva. Aleph, Takanah the Teshuva, Takanah Shel Teshuva, Hanitenes B'Yad Adam, Teikef Be'eis Ma'isa Achet. Kishem Shemi Shehechser Pesach Rishon. Mezumenes B'Yadei Teikef Takanah's Pesach Sheni. Va'ofen zeh hu B'Teshuva al Chatoim Stam Shekvar B'Shas Achet Kayemes Efshoris L'Tikun Idei Teshuva. It's built into the system. Hashem made it that as soon as I mess up, I right away have the opportunity to fix it. That is Takanah. That's the built-in system of Teshuva. Beis Tashlumin the Teshuva. There's a certain type of Teshuva which is not quite built in. There is something called Echta v'ashuv. If someone does an Aveda and he says, I'll do this Aveda, it's a very gishmaka thing, but I don't want to be on Hashem's bad book, so I have option, plan B, I'll do Teshuva. So here I'm going to go enjoy this treifa burger, and I'll do Teshuva afterwards. So it says about someone that says, Echta v'ashuv, that ein maspikim biyodei lasis Teshuva. A case like that is not called Takanah, because Teshuva is not built in. When someone goes ahead and pre-plans his Teshuva, pre-plans his Aveda, and says, I'm doing an Aveda so I can do Teshuva, and I'm going to, get back because of Teshuva, then that's a very difficult situation of Teshuva. It's not a level that's like built in. It's not a Teshuva that comes along with it, like by other Avedas, where immediately you do the Aveda, there's right away Takanah, there's right away the Takanah of Teshuva available. So he says, Beis Tashlumin the Teshuva al Chet Shenasa ba'ofen shel Echta v'ashuv v'zai ein maspikim biyodei lasis Teshuva. The Chazal say, B'shas ma'isa achet ein biyodei haTakanah the Teshuva. Hoyel v'Teshuva geremes le'lachtoi. The Chazal explain why. The Alter Rebbe explains in Geras Teshuva why. If a person says Echta v'ashuv ein maspikim biyodei lasis Teshuva, because the Teshuva contributed to a sin. Since the Teshuva contributed to the Aveda, because if you wouldn't have had the option of doing Teshuva, would he have done the Aveda? No. The only reason he did the Aveda is because he knew he'd be able to do Teshuva. Since Teshuva contributed to doing the Aveda, so Teshuva is not easily available for him.
The same story about the Schuyus is because, why should you do? Is because you're at the time.
He's giving you a stronger push to do the Teshuva Ma'ava. Exactly. It's the flip side of that. Right. Al derech en kateger nasus haneger. It says that something that's the prosecutor cannot become the defense attorney, because you can't have the very thing itself that caused the person to do the Aveda now to protect him from the Aveda. But Alter Rebbe says, when it says ein maspikim biyodei lasis Teshuva, that doesn't mean it's impossible. The Alter Rebbe says in the Geras Teshuva, Avalim la'acher mekein dochak v'nischazek chulu v'asa Teshuva mekablim Teshuvasei. That is the level of Teshuva, not as a Takanah, but as a Tashlumin. Gimel, then there's a level of Teshuva as a regel b'fnei atzmai. What do we say regel b'fnei atzmai means? Pesach Sheni is not really related to Pesach Rishon. Pesach Sheni, what did the Rambam say? It's its own mitzvah. And if someone never even had the obligation to do a Pesach Rishon, like a ger before he was Nisgayer, or a cotton Nisgadol, you still have the chiyuv of Pesach Sheni. Why? Because regel b'fnei atzmai. What is that in the nimshal? So the Rebbe says there's another level of tshuva. Tshuva of a tzaddik, that he's not out to fix something that he did wrong. Just like the cotton shehigdal is not out to fix something that he did wrong. The gershon is gayer is not out to fix something he did wrong. Inyan Teshuva of Tzaddikim u'kiyaduam she'inyan tshuva eino ketois ha'olam al chatoim davke. Elahu derech va'avodas Hashem sheyesh lo mokim gametz al elu anikim mechatoim k'mayim Mashiach also la'asavat tzaddikai b'teyufta. Mashiach is going to bring tzaddikim to do tshuva. Because the idea of tshuva is varuch tashva l'kimasher nesana, becoming closer to Hashem. And becoming closer to Hashem does not mean that the person necessarily was so far that he was far because of Avedis. The very fact that a person is a neshama in a physical body down here, he's distant from Hashem, so he has an Avodah of Tshuva. So even tzaddikim can have the Avodah of Tshuva. So the Rebbe is going to say, how does that fit in with what we just now said about Pesach Sheni and Nishtakim Farfallen and so on? The quote is Meir Chamad Mur Ein Davar Chasset Takanah Afil Mitzvah Tamei Vafil Kshoyz Alachem Meine B'Ritzoy Nechulu, which means Tshuva Al Chet Mekal Makom Bechlalis Nechlalim Pesach Sheni Kol Leifane Tshuva Kol Tshuva Tzaddikim Bedugmas Chodesh Tishrei V'Kanal Sivches Pesach Sheni Bedugmas Chodesh Tishrei Shegam Hu Kol Leifane Tshuva B'Chlalim Gam Tshuva Tzaddikim. We said that Tishrei and Nisan is also Teshuva and the Avodah of Baalei Teshuva, the Avodah of Tzaddikim. It's not just Avodah of Teshuva for people that did Avedis. The Avodah of Baalei Teshuva of the month of Tishrei is also for Tzaddikim. Al pi anal bein at the count of the Teshuva yitvas of bir bedin shlematzinum shafilu rasha asher moisiv koyach beklippus idea Torah and mitzvah shaloi. When a rasha learns Torah, it's brought down according to Kabbalah, and it's interesting. The Alter Rebbe brings us down Hilchos Talmud Torah that he adds chayis into Klippa. His Torah learning adds chayis into Klippa. Still in all, even a Rasha chayiv lilmid Torah afilu shaloi lishma. Why? Because it's like a layaway plan. It's invested. Lefit sheyachzar acharch b'tshuva azay moitzim ha'klippa kol ha'Torah ha'mitzvos chul. Kloimar limit aTorah shaloi ba'odei rasha hu melchatchila al smach zeh shal acher mikein yaset tshuva. He's not sinning to do tshuva. He's not saying echta va'ashuv, but the mitzvahs that he's doing now, even the energy of the mitzvahs is going down to klippa, but he has in the back of his mind, or what Shulchan Aruch says, eventually you're going to do tshuva, you'll schlep out the chayes from klippa. Gizau achidush betakanta the tshuva sha'atoyda nisenes melachatchila b'shas ma'isa chetes avsharius v'atakana the tshuva v'av shedin zeh shagam b'oy the rosh chayiv v'lumei Torah chal al kol sugei rishoyim koil ala omer echta v'ashuv she'ein b'atakanta the tshuva kanal. By him we said the level of tshuva is a level of Tashlumin, not in the way of Takanah, because his tshuva is ein maspikim miyadi lasses tshuva, because he said echta v'ashuv. Hare ein lezeh shayches klal la'aliyas halimud. Let's say if a person did something like that, he did Avedis on the smach that I'm going to do tshuva later on, but that doesn't affect the learning that he does. It only affects that his tshuva is going to be difficult to do. But his learning is not affected because he did an Aveda on Echta V'ashuv. When he's saying, I will sin and then I will do tshuva, it's not referring to learning Torah. There is a minority of cases where a person could study Torah in such a type of way, like it says, that there's such a type of Talmud that could learn 150 reasons to make something not kosher. So there is a situation where a person could learn Torah where the Torah itself is like an Aveda. Gam olav lilmoid. I'm sorry. V'soymech aloyim el kach she'echtav ashuv. Why am I learning in this way? Because later I'm going to do tshuva. Gam olav olav lilmoid ki b'chol oifen vade adover she'yachzor kach b'tshuva. Elach shechiluk yesh bedover me'acher she'em aspikim chulu. Since someone that says echtav ashuv, they don't make it easy for him. There's still a difference. B'suga achron yeshli zokik mitzadei maspikim, top of the page 124. Letam she'af hanidach muftach soif soif shevadei soif elasus tshuva. The Alter Rebbe says that the reason why a person that's a Rasha should learn Torah, because since we know lo yidach v'menu nidach, no Jew will ever be pushed away from Hashem. Every Jew eventually is going to do tshuva. So he says that begilgul zeh, begilgul acher, k'ma shekal lo yidach v'menu nidach. So therefore, a person should learn Torah because sometime this Gilgul, a different Gilgul, the Torah, the Chayis that he put into Klippas is going to be taken out. That's only by such Avedas that he's doing it in such a way that it's Takanah doesn't apply, it's only Tashlumin, it's Echtav V'ashuv. Then you're going to say, eventually, it's going to be taken care of. You don't have to come on to that. Someone that's just he's doing Avedis and he's learning Torah, but he's not Echtav V'ashuv, so he's not a Nidach that you have to rely. He's just in a state that he's Rachik for now. Like we said before, yes, biyodik far Takanah the Teshuva, bedugmas Takanah the Pesach Sheni. So now the Rebbe is going to flip a little bit around and say, just like in Teshuva, which is Pesach Sheni, there's also the Avodah of Tzaddikim, there's Tzaddikim doing Teshuva, so too in Nisan, which is the Avodah of Tzaddikim, there's also the relationship of Teshuva. Kishem Pesach Sheni koil is kolifani atshuva va'afas tshuva satzadikim keinu gam benegel Pesach Rishon shekoil b'soichi b'chlolos is kolifani avodas satzadikim koil tshuva satzadikim. V'lechein therefore av shagula sidatia b'chodesh Nisan avodas satzadikim harei hi tia kshura ba'avodas satshuva v'kanal shemashiach hasla asav tzadikai b'tiyufta, and Mashiach is going to bring tzadikim to do tshuva. It's brought down, the very famous Maimar Chazal, the Rebbe always says, that in Nisan, the Yidden will become redeemed. Asidinli go. Nisan Nigalub, Nisan Asidinli go. So when we have the Avodah of Nisan, the Avodah of Tzaddikim, we also have Tshuva incorporated in it. Because Mashiach is not just about Tzaddikim, Mashiach is about bringing Tzaddikim to do Tshuva as well. Okay, this idea that in the middle of the Avodah of Tzaddikim there's also the Avodah of Teshuva. Why does it say when Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden to prepare the sheep for the Korban Pesach, he said Mishchu Chulachem? What's this idea of Mishchu? Chulachem, prepare a sheep on the 10th of the month of Nisan. They have to prepare it for 4 days. What's this mishchu? What does that mean? Already in the month of Nisan, which is mainly the Avodah of Tzaddikim, they had something similar to the Avodah of Teshuva. Tear yourself away from Avodah Zarah. Like we said before, that they were a cotton shenoilad, and therefore real Teshuva doesn't apply because they're a newborn baby. It says, Mishchu ukchu. Not everybody took Korban Pesach, did Avodah Zarah. Kol elu shlo yoslam kol shaychas Avodah Zarah. Al she'etzlam lo yosazu tshuva al chet al bedugmas tshuva satzadikim mitzadim motzam ba'olam sheyesher makim l'mtzit shal Avodah Zarah ad shesh tzorich lahoydis mishchu tchum Avodah Zarah. In other words, even tzaddikim, that their problem is they never did any Aveda, but they still have the idea of Tshuva. We said, Varuch Tashva Elokim Asher Nasanu. Why do tzaddikim have to have the idea of Tshuva? Because they're located in a world that has to do it in Yom Avodah Zarah. So they're far from the Eibishter. That's the mishchu, that's the tshuva that's shaykh even by tzaddikim in the month of Nisan. Yud Beis. Now we get back to the original question, the Rambam. How does the Rambam say that it's a regel, even if he says regel of na'atzmei, how's he counted as a separate mitzvah? Seemingly it's a mitzvah that's linked to the mitzvah of Pesach Rishon. How do you count Pesach Sheni as a separate mitzvah? Al pikal now move latam shemona Rambam Pesach Sheni k'mitzvah v'fnei atzmam av shemi shehikriv Pesach Rishon eini yochel lahakriv Pesach Sheni kiven shepesach Rishon v'Pesach Sheni hem ochin shtei avodas nefrodos. What we said right away in the beginning, there are two separate gedarim, there are two separate categories. Therefore, you can't mix them together. Pesach Rishon hu avodas Tzaddikim, hu Pesach Sheni hu avodas Teshuva. Yet, even though they're two separate avodas, the second avodah only comes if you messed up in the first avodah. Al shemikol makim hakrovas Pesach Sheni ein nedreshes im hoyz hakrovas Pesach Rishon ki ka'amar Pesach Rishon koil gamas Teshuvas Tzaddikim ubemeilo nichol bezeh gam in the regel avodah fnei atzmei Pesach Sheni. Since in Pesach Rishon we said there's already mishchu chulachem, there's already the avodah of Teshuva, so that's why even a tzaddik that he did the Avodah of Pesach Rishon, he has Pesach Sheni in it. But he has the Pesach Sheni, the Avodah of Teshuva already by Pesach Rishon. Afa pi shekam Pesach Sheni, Pesach Rishon, Tzaddikim, yesh na Avodah Teshuva, mi'acher shezoi Teshuva Tzaddikim, ein ba mailos Teshuva the Pesach Sheni. It's still not on the level of Teshuva of Pesach Sheni. She'ikar in Yonah hu Teshuva al chet, Takanah v'Tashlumin. Regel b'fnei atzmei, we said, that's the Avodah of Tzaddikim. But the other opinions, Takanah v'Tashlumim, that's the Avodah of Baalei Teshuva. Ve'ein zois ela shebiyois Pesach Sheni koilos kol efana Teshuva me'melo nechlalos v'gam Teshuvas Tzaddikim. But that's not the main message of Pesach Sheni. The main message of Pesach Sheni is the Avodah of Teshuva. U'mayla zu, why is the Avodah of Baalei Teshuva greater than the Avodah of Tzaddikim? B'shnei inyan. Aleph, Hatzimoin the Baalei Teshuva nevea davkim mekach shad heino is a nafshe be'eretziya v'tzalmovis yasitra acha chulu ulefichach tzimoinu b'yasar oz masher b'tzadikim she'etzlam ein zeh shaykh. Like you were saying, Penny, that the because he was so far and because he did the Avedas, that's why he has such a greater love for the Eibishter. That type of love for the Eibishter, that type of tzimoin for the Eibishter is not shaykh by a tzadik. Yeah, he could want to return to the Eibishter because he's so far in this world. But he never got as far as the Baalei Teshuva. So since he never got as far as the Baalei Teshuva, his yearning and thirst for the Eibishter can never be as powerful as the yearning of the Baalei Teshuva. That's why the Baalei Teshuva's level of avodah is so much more powerful, in one reason. And the second reason is based, Teshuva al chet, magas, ad l'mayla mishtalshos, like we said before. V'lachem b'koicha la'afik zdoinus l'zochias v'kanal sivov. Mash'enkin at-tzadikim afilu kashiyesh b'yod ma'avodas Teshuva. Ein la koyach lafik zdoinus v'zochios. V'zeh watam shepesach sheni davku yom echad v'ilu pesach rishon u'shuva yomim. Ki afa pi shagam b'pesach rishon yesh ne'in not shuva. So maybe Pesach Rishon should also be one day because we said shuva is higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, but it's not that type of level of shuva. Harizoi Teshuvas Tzaddikim, which doesn't tap into the level as higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, which is one. שעדיין במדידה והגבולה, שכן אפילו בכל מועדך של צדיק ובסדר והדרגה, there's the avodah called בכל מועדך, where the person does things בלי גבול. But even when he does it בלי גבול, it's still with a certain order. ועל דרך מה שמצינו שגם לאחר תשובס רבי אלעזר מדדיה, אוירדו שבוחר רבי, it says Rabbi cried because of the teshuva of Rabbi Elazar ben Nadaya. ובכיה מוירל עניין של המיילה מהגבולה. Why does a person cry? A person cries when he can't control himself. He's going out of his box. It could be from sadness, it could be from joy, any type of thing where he's breaking out of himself, that's crying. So the fact that a Rebbe was inspired to cry because of Rabbi Elazar ben Nadaya, that means that what Rabbi Elazar ben Nadaya did elevated Rebbe to a level to go out of Hagabol. But still in all, Rebbe still did not have this level of the real tshuva of Rabbi Elazar ben Nadaya of Koydei Lam B'Shoachas. L'mayla mischalkas Rebbe didn't reach. Dafke Pesach Sheni, Teshuva al Chet, Lafach is doinus l'zachis, Kepiska manalt kveit yosh mercha me'ad mura fil chashoyz al-lachem eine berzoyne. Afal bekin efshel asaken, Magas b'mokum shalomayl mischalkos yoyim echad Pesach Sheni is one day, Val derech miles Rabbalazim and the day shedafke Teshuva soy, which his Teshuva was not the Teshuva of Tzaddikim, but it was Teshuva al Chet, Paul sheyiyah kainei lamay b'shah achas, dafke the oneness that's higher than division and change.